Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be continuing our discussion of hit points based on the notes that I drew up about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition when we were considering using it or maybe developing some other system or even using some other system when we were working on a Cthulhu mythos based RPG set in the medieval ages. And one of my problems with Dungeons & Dragons has always been the hit point system as it is manifested in many different editions over the years. And I did a brief overview of, the hit point debate in another video where I basically spelled out in brief terms the hit point debate and why it's generated so much controversy in the tabletop gaming community for years and years and years and years. But hit points themselves are not my problem. Just this idea of here's this total of points, weapons, damage takes down the number of points. When you get to 0, you're dead. Or unconscious or about to bleed out and almost dead or whatever it is depending on the particular system. So hit points in general aren't my problem, but my problem is definitely inflationary hit points. And that means that hit points that are continually increasing as your characters gain in experience, and of course in Dungeons & Dragons this is manifested most concretely in terms of level, that you're getting more and more hit points as you go up in level. And I think that means that it's very hard to calibrate things like weapon damage when you don't really even understand how much damage a typical human can take, because there is no way to define how much damage that typical human can take. And then you've got barbarians and fighters and clerics and even wizards are increasing in hit points, although not as fast, as they go up. So I feel like in order to construct a system, I need to know how much damage can the typical human take. And so these were just my general notes that I sent to the development team about a non-inflationary hit point system. I said I've always had a problem with inflationary hit points. In an alternative system, hit points would be based on your strength, which is the closest approximation to physical bulk, which is a good predictor of withstanding physical damage. A standard human would have 10 hit points with the additional modifier of their strength score. This should make it easier to calibrate weapon damages as well. There should probably also be a size modifier as well. Gigantic creatures may have more hit points based on their mass, and likewise tiny creatures will have less. This should not increase with character level. Instead, characters get harder to hit because of greater armor or other things that raise their AC. That was my general thinking on the subject, because then if I had some type of idea that, 10 hit points worth of damage will take someone from full health to dead, if that's the way we're going here, then I can start to think about different strikes, critical damage, different weapon types, and things like that. Something that's going to stay consistent throughout the game. And I don't have this scaling effect that's going up dramatically as the characters increase in power. Now, Gurps, which has long been one of my favorite systems, and is one of the systems that I think most about when I'm thinking about RPG design. I think about Gurps quite a bit, and it does have hit points, so no problem there, but they aren't inflationary. They have this much more static system where hit points are much more of a known quantity, and that has allowed them to calibrate weapon damages. Of course, the weapon damages in this game are based on strength for like melee attack weapons, because they know what it's going to take out a basic human being, and then they can go from there. And they don't have this wildly varying number of hit points based on your particular level. And hit points in here are based on strength. I remember in 3rd edition, they were based on your health, your HT, and it seemed like everybody used the house rule even in 3rd edition, or lots of people did, that the hit points should be based on strength, because what I'm talking about here, that strength is our closest approximation to physical bulk, which is our best gauge about how much damage a particular person is going to be able to soak up, like how much mass have they got. So I would say that the thinking on hit points is highly inspired by Gurps here. The other system that I think about a lot is Hackmaster here, and even though it does have an inflationary hit point system, it doesn't have an inflationary system that is nearly as bad as Dungeons & Dragons. So I was noticing here, if we take a look at hit points in Hackmaster, now it is based on Constitution, which is a much more kind of Dungeons & Dragons thing to do, even though to me Constitution is more like health, and so strength is probably a better way to think about hit points. But Hackmaster says that your initial hit points are based on Constitution score plus his size bonus, plus there is this class die roll depending on the class of the character. But when we're talking about gaining in level, let's check that out. So when you advance a level, you do roll hit points. It says roll hit points. At even levels, this is a re-roll, an effort to exceed the previous level's roll and improve upon those old learnings with new insights. Any roll below the old roll is ignored. Further, any roll below the midpoint roll half of maximum is increased to half the hit die's maximum amount. At odd levels, this is a full new hit die. Hit die do not penetrate, and penetrate is its word, as the Hackmaster's word for basically exploding, where you keep rolling more and more if you've rolled the highest number. So that means that every other level you are trying to roll to see if you can exceed the previous level's roll on the hit die roll, and if so, then you get to increase your hit points by the difference, and if not, then you don't, basically. On the odd levels, you're increasing a hit die. So that means that you are increasing the number of hit points the character has and are kind of inflating the hit points as you go, but not nearly as badly as something like Dungeons & Dragons. And so I think this is an interesting system because it does illustrate that, well, it's not one or the other. You know, we've got this, what I think is a very kind of inflationary hit point system in Dungeons & Dragons, and then we have non-inflationary hit point systems, you know, completely in Gurps. But then again, there are other ways to do things. And so this is an interesting kind of halfway point where you are getting more hit points. So if you like hit points and what they represent in the abstract, you're getting more, but they're not just running away with things, potentially, right? It was brought up in some of the other videos where I was talking about using potentially 2d10 or 3d6 or something like that instead of d20 for attack rolls in Dungeons & Dragons. It was brought up that potentially the high variability of the d20 could be mitigated in many circumstances by having characters have a lot more hit points and then also multi-attacks, which I haven't thought too much about. So you're going to be throwing more dice over the amount of time combat's going on, and so maybe all of this will kind of equal out anyway. That could potentially be true, and if you're doing a real detailed analysis of the D&D combat system, then you would certainly want to include not just the roll of the d20, but all of these hit points that you are getting, and then also multiple attacks and all of that. But I don't really favor that, because I think having so many hit points that you are grinding away, you know, d8 by d8 or d10 by d10 or sometimes d6 by d6 makes combat go on too long. And of course, I know there is a tremendous amount of material out there about making Dungeons & Dragons, particularly 5th edition combat, more exciting and how to run them and things like that. And I likely don't disagree with a lot that's out there. There are certainly things you can do to make the combat more exciting, but to me, one of the reasons that you get bogged down in combat with just round after round after round of combat is because you are trying to wear down some large number of hit points, especially as you go up in level. And there's only so many times you can roll a d20, see if you hit or miss, and then take out, you know, d12 or d10 or some number of hit points that you're grinding down. I do think that combat should be more significant than that, and I think that wounds should be very significant as well, according to the playstyle that I am most interested in. I don't really care too much about grinding down hit points for a long, long time. I've mentioned in other videos, like the one where I was talking about 0-level characters, that the game that I played in where we were playing 0-level characters, of course, we didn't have a bunch of hit points, but everything that happened was very significant, and we told a great story. So, of course, different players will have different ideas about what is fun. Some people will absolutely love the hit point system as it stands and the combat system in Dungeons & Dragons as it stands. I want something with a bit more punch, a little bit more bite, that when it happens, significant things happen a lot faster, and we're not just trying to wear down this large number of hit points based on an inflationary hit point system. Okay, I think this video has gone on long enough. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and all of that jazz. It really helps a lot. But also, please check out The Cultists, the web series on this channel about modern-day D&D playing Lovecraftian cultists who just want to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who just don't understand. Season 1 is on the channel now. But also, please check out my YouTube channel. I have over 150 videos on tabletop games and the fantasy genre. If you've enjoyed this video, you might enjoy many of them as well. I look forward to seeing you for them and many more videos to come. Later.